Good evening and welcome to Scotland at 7 here on Broadcasting Scotland. My name's Kenny McBride and I'm joined in the studio this evening at a safe distance of about 2 metres by SNP Socialist Group member and West of Scotland NEC candidate for the SNP,
Yeah.
Chris McCusker. Chris, how are you doing?
Excellent, Kenneth. Really weird to be back in the studio, but very nice to be back in the studio. I've not seen you since February.
It's been quite a while anyway,
Quite
yes.
a while.
But it is indeed good to have you back here, Chris. But we start this evening, as we always do, with our coronavirus statistics update. So as of 2 p.m. today, a total of 1,143,099 people in Scotland have been tested through NHS Scotland labs and UK government regional testing centres. Of these, 1,053,018 were confirmed negative, 90,081 were positive. There were 771 new confirmed cases of COVID-19 in Scotland today and sadly 41 new reported deaths. Of course, this will be an underestimate of the total number of cases, as not everyone with the virus will show symptoms and not everyone will necessarily get themselves tested. As always, we urge you, if you are showing symptoms of a new, dry, persistent cough, a fever, or a change in your sense of taste or smell, then do please book a test as soon as you can. Of the people who have tested positive, there were 1,197 people in hospital last night, 84 of whom were in intensive care. And the number of patients in Scotland who have died from complications caused by the coronavirus infection now stands at 3,544. This number only includes those who have died in hospital having received a positive test for the virus. And the latest UK daily figures published today show that 55,838 patients who tested positive for COVID-19 have sadly died from their illness, an increase of 608 since yesterday. This number refers to deaths in all settings, not just those in hospitals. And we also have the latest report from the Office for National Statistics covering deaths in England and Wales for the week ending Friday the 13th of November, which was week 46 of the year. In that week, 2,466 deaths were registered in England and Wales where the novel coronavirus was mentioned on the death certificate. This was roughly 20% of all deaths registered during that week. Of these, 2,274 were in England and 190 in Wales. That's an increase in England of 28% from the previous week and about 14% in Wales. However, this total is around 250 deaths fewer than previously announced in UK daily reporting for that week. Once again, deaths in hospitals, care homes and private homes were all above the 5-year average, although deaths in other locations were slightly below. And the data in this report brings the total coronavirus-related deaths in England and Wales at the 13th of November to 61,136. And before we go on with the rest of today's headlines, if you would like to join the conversation here on Broadcasting Scotland, you can do so by following us on Twitter at BroadcastScot and using the hashtag Scotland@7. And as you can see, we'll be flashing some of these up on the screen throughout the show, so do please get in touch. But our first story this evening, First Minister Nicola Sturgeon gave a statement to Parliament today on the state of the coronavirus pandemic in Scotland. She announced that all current restriction tiers will remain in place for the time being, except for East Lothian. As we reported last night, East Lothian is to move into level 2. Specific outbreaks have been identified in the northeast, meaning rising case numbers there do not require stricter general restrictions. However, Perth and Kinross and Clackmannanshire are both being watched closely, given recent increases in those areas. The First Minister added that vaccines offered a lot of promise and said she was extremely hopeful that a vaccination programme could be underway before Christmas. And later, Sturgeon announced an agreement with the other UK leaders to ease some restrictions over the Christmas period. A window will be opened from the 23rd to the 27th of December, during which travel restrictions will be lifted across the UK and up to 3 households will be permitted to gather in a private home. So, Chris, the First Minister today did point out that case numbers are down a bit in Scotland. We are seeing some decline in hospital numbers as well. Obviously, those can be a wee bit more variable day to day. We think the R number is down below 1. Also potentially the vaccine coming out before Christmas. Do Do you think this is a good idea to have this break where people are allowed to travel more, mix a wee bit more?
Well, personally, and I do stress it personally, no, I don't. I don't think that we should be doing anything that we should be paying for possibly sometime after New Year. And I say that with a heavy heart because the announcements today is seriously going to hamper my Christmas. Many people have got up to 6 or 8 households associated with their own household that they normally see at Christmas time. I, for one, have got about six or 7. It just causes a nightmare. It could possibly cause friction within the families. At the end of the day, the festive period is supposed to be, all about joy and giving and not about fighting and preferential treatment and all the rest of it.
But potentially giving each other coronavirus.
Well, this is it again, and it is a real tough one, and people will, naturally be slightly apprehensive about it, to be honest with you. There will be some people that will, naturally bend the rules a bit. There's no two ways about it.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you about, because obviously you will be scrupulous about this. You're not a dafty. You do stick to the rules as a rule.
Yeah.
So you're not going to start bringing all your different connections together.
Yeah, no, I
but
can't.
As you said, some people probably will. I mean, how big a problem do you think that could be? Do you think the majority of people will stick quite closely to the rules? And
I think the majority of people will stick very closely to the rules. However, there will be some who will give themselves not carte blanche, but they will give themselves
a wee bit of license
to sort of play around in the grey areas. They do that at their own peril. Some people, like I know, personally having discussions with people that I know, don't have COVID, they're not on the COVID spectrum, shall we say, in any such way, shape or form. But by the same token, if we could say that about everyone, then, we could sort of section ourselves off on an island and have one hell of a party. But that's, just chancing it. So, I think we have to stick as close to the rules as possible, with possibly just maybe a couple of wee caveats here and there. You know what I mean?
Yeah, obviously, we just have to hope that the current restrictions can bring it down to a point where we're relatively safe going into that period.
Yeah. Well, the other side of the coin is the fact that there have been some arguments that New Year in Scotland means a lot more than Christmas. At one time, in my far distant youth, that used to be the case, but so, not now. Most of my elderly family are sadly passed on, and that whole sort of like Glasgow party type thing doesn't happen anymore, sadly. New Year really doesn't mean a hell of a lot for me the way that it used to do. It's very generational, I would say. But by the same token, you don't want to be handing out coronavirus along with your buttered parsnips and overcooked Brussels sprouts. Not that I do, because I'm a chef. But you don't want to be putting people's lives in danger, especially not your family. And that's at the crux of the matter. It's, it is at the end of the day your family that you're talking about. It's not, folk that you've invited off of Facebook or something like that to come in and share your Christmas dinner. It's people that you love. We all try and do things that, wouldn't harm the people that we love.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we move on to slightly more immediate matters, and the UK government must step up, respect devolution, and honour its commitment to replacing EU funds in full. Ministers from Wales and Scotland have demanded today. Speaking ahead of the UK government's spending review, Jeremy Miles and Kate Forbes expressed their frustration that no practical arrangements for the Shared Prosperity Fund have been made by the UK government, despite EU funding set to tail off at the end of this year. In contrast, both the Welsh and Scottish governments published their proposals for the fund last week, following extensive collaboration and support from local authorities, the private sector, universities and colleges, and the third sector in both nations. Ms Forbes has also called on the UK government to use tomorrow's spending review to prioritise public services and economic recovery through a UK-wide fresh fiscal stimulus package of £98 billion, on a par with support provided by other nations such as Germany, France and New Zealand. Welsh Government Counsel General and Minister for European Transition Jeremy Miles said, "The UK government must make good on promises repeatedly made that Brexit would not mean any loss of funding and that the devolution settlement would be respected." So that last quote from Jeremy Miles, the Welsh Government Minister, bear in mind that's a Labour Minister, commenting on the UK government's promises that Brexit wouldn't mean any loss of funding and that the devolution settlement will be respected. At the risk of causing you to burst out laughing, Chris, how well do you think the UK government has made good on those promises so far?
Right, okay. I'll fall for that one. This is off the back of Boris Johnson blaming Labour for devolution itself. Let's get that one crystal clear. And Boris Johnson is not in favour of devolution at all. Don't get me wrong, he was in favour of it in his 2 terms as London Mayor, but anything that happens outside the M25 orbital is really not in his brief. So it is notable as well as the fact that it's not just Scotland who seems to be harping from the sidelines on this one. It's the other devolved competencies as well. And it is heartening to see that Labour are demanding the exact same settlement as Scotland is demanding, which is rightfully due. That was set out in the agreement, when we actually, semi-agreed to leave the EU, by some sort of default and debauchery that went on the hands of Dominic Cummings and Nigel Farage. But the end product has yet to be delivered, and that's the damning thing for me, because I am what's the word? Dare I say eagerly waiting? Yeah, I think I will. Eagerly waiting for the middle classes to see exactly what Brexit is going to mean to them. Brexit's already hit the working classes. It's yet to impact on the middle classes. And when the middle classes see exactly what Brexit will do to them, which will do to their finances, what it will do to the impingement of their travel. We're talking skiing holidays here, we're talking, trips to the Niagara Falls and all the rest of it. As middle class people like to do. Earlier on I tweeted about the recommencement of the daily flights to Dubai by Emirates. Predominantly, that's I used to check that in and stuff like that. It's predominantly as middle class people that go on that. Do you know what I mean?
Not a lot of working class trips to Dubai.
No. We're not talking about people with a suitcase and sombrero and stuff like that. We're talking serious amount of luggage going there. Once the middle classes see exactly what Brexit actually means to them per se, to their actual family, and how it's going to hit on the running of their car, to running of the house, to it's honestly, it's going to be absolute madness. But again, they won't see that until they will see it soon enough come January the 1st. Even if you take something that's really, really trivial, not trivial, obviously, in aviation matters, but the AVI that you have to do, which pertains to the transport of animals. That's complicated enough paperwork-wise.
Yeah.
Can you imagine what it's going to be like after Brexit?
Yeah.
It's just going to be horrendous.
Well, we will find out in about 5 weeks. It's amazing just how quickly the time has disappeared, as I'm sure the Brexit negotiators are currently thinking. Well, we move on now, and the Chancellor has been warned against using his spending review to pursue all the wrong priorities in the middle of a pandemic, a Tory unemployment crisis, and a looming extreme Brexit threat. Ahead of the statement, the SNP's Shadow Chancellor Alison Thewlis MP challenged Rishi Sunak to set out a fiscal stimulus of at least £98 billion and the devolution of financial powers, a package of meaningful measures to put money in people's pockets as a Tory unemployment crisis and an extreme Brexit looms, and a major cash injection for the NHS and social care across the 4 UK nations. It comes as reports grow that the Treasury instead intends to push ahead with plans to impose a pay freeze on millions of public sector workers in the middle of a crisis, waste nearly £30 million on a Festival of Brexit event, and change the law to cut the aid budget, which will abandon the world's poorest and most vulnerable. Now, a number of these are things that the Alison Thewlis has been fighting for really since March, and even before on issues like the 2-child limit on universal credit or tax credits and so on. What do you think the impact of this will be? Do you think the Chancellor is going to pull something out of the bag tomorrow to cheer everybody up after these kind of leaks of quite dark things that were being planned?
I don't think he can, to be honest with you. I think he is under the thumb, and he must adhere to what is emanating out from his boss. The UK has spent $2 trillion on COVID alone. They do say that amount of money will be replicated in us leaving the EU. That is £4 trillion pounds that is just gone. Just wiped off of the UK economy. When you put it in stark figures like that, and then you start to possibly think about, and I will use one of Boris's terms of splaffing, copious amounts, oodles amounts, really obscene amounts of money on private contracts, vanity projects, things that we just cannot afford to spend on at this moment in time. We shouldn't be spending money on nuclear weapons at any time, especially through a pandemic. We should be putting a halt on things like the crosslink and thing with the Thames HS2. So, all these vanity projects should be just ceased and recommenced once the UK has balanced itself out. But yet they are ploughing ahead with this agenda. This I hate using this one nation conservatism agenda, which is is like a runaway train because of the seat majority that they've got. That they have got carte blanche to do what they like, whilst the initial introduction of the furlough scheme, I actually saw it as a bit of a socialist policy. I actually thought it's got all the hallmarks of UBI without actually being UBI, and it's actually quite radical. It possibly doesn't, do everything that it says on the tin, but it goes some way, in order to mitigate the disaster that's going to befall workers and the citizens of the UK. But then when you see them welshing and reneging on the deal, and we're going to reduce it to 60%, and we're going to reduce it to 40%, and then we're going to further reduce it again, and then all of a sudden at the last minute they have to reintroduce it because they are like rabbits caught in a set of headlights, and they have to be seen to be doing something in order to appease their supporters.
Yeah.
I mean, we haven't even touched on the revelation that happened today about Michelle Ballantyne. And it makes you wonder why somebody of that ilk would leave their party. There could be underlying things there. I don't know.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. We weren't planning on covering this as a story, but I do have a copy of the letter.
As if by magic.
I do have a copy of the letter that Michelle Ballantyne wrote. It says, "With great sadness, Dear Douglas and Ruth," it should be noted. It is with great sadness that I've decided to resign from the Scottish Conservative and Union Party, blah, blah, blah. And then she says, "As Douglas indicated in his address to our party conference, there are differences arising for some, myself including, in the party's positioning on policy and indeed its principles. Sadly for me, this means I no longer feel that the party and I are a good fit." We have yet to find out exactly what Michelle Ballantyne's dispute with the party is, but we will obviously look into that and see if we have something for you tomorrow.
The obvious conundrum to ask about that is that are the Scottish Tories not far right enough for Michelle Ballantyne?
Please don't say things like that when I've got a mouthful of water. We move on now, though, and the SNP has urged the UK government to provide clear guidance on how it plans to replace a £170 million black hole for Scotland's rural economy, created by the UK's exit from the EU. In a scathing letter to the Environment Secretary, George Eustace, all three senior government ministers for rural affairs in the devolved governments urged him and his cabinet colleagues to provide more clarity and to work with the Scottish, Welsh and Northern Irish governments on plans to replace the millions of pounds the farming industry will lose out on as a result of Brexit. Ahead of the spending review, the Chancellor is being called upon to fully replace all the funding lost, which in Scotland amounts to around £170 million by 2024. This is funding that under the Common Agricultural Policy went to farmers and land managers for activity to enhance the environment, to rural businesses and communities for local projects and initiatives through LEADER, and was used to fund woodland creation and provide farm advice and support innovation. Now, we mentioned that LEADER programme, which of course our friend Day Tucker was involved in. That's where she gets that rural leader name from. But this is a real problem, isn't it? That, as we said, 5 weeks from the turn of the year, when we leave all of the EU's institutions, we stop being under EU rules. So things like the Common Agricultural Policy go away. That money isn't there anymore. Now, the UK government obviously isn't spending that money into the EU budget anymore, so it does have that money available. Why do you think we're still not hearing detail of these kind of things just weeks before it all is meant to happen?
2 words, Kenny. Well, no, 3 words. A lack of clarity in leadership.
That's 5 words.
Okay, fine, be pedantic.
A lack of clarity from you there, Chris.
But yeah, it is a severe lack of clarity in leadership from the UK government. They have been deceitful, to say the least, in hiding various things from the UK citizens. That they once said that when we leave the EU, I think it was quoted that 126 new powers will come to the Scottish government, and yet they've yet to mention one. Do you know what I mean? And what we have seen in recent months, violently challenged by Ian Blackford and the team down in Westminster, is the fact that the Tories actually want to take powers away from the Scottish government. They've set up their own English office in Scotland, as I refer to it, just round the corner from the Holyrood Palace. You see them And this is in relation to another good friend of the show, Ruth Watson. You see them, plastering their Union Jack emblem on all the Scottish produce, reclaiming that for the empire, in order to bolster the flagging economy at this moment in time. Boris Johnson is all about centralisation. He has made it as clear as the nose on your face as the fact that he hates devolution with a vengeance when it doesn't suit him, because he's not in direct control. This is the thing about devolution. When he had it, when he had it as Mayor of London, he was in control of that devolution. But because he's not in control of the Scottish Parliament, he's not in control of the Welsh Assembly, and he's not in control in Northern Ireland, then he doesn't like devolution because he's a control freak. And that's be all and end all of it. So they are not going to repatriate these 126 powers back to Scotland, back to Wales, back to Northern Ireland, just because that is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
They will want to centralise everything, and then, like the how the Provident used to treat you in the 70s, they would just keep you on the drip and just feed you every now and again. Do you know what I mean? Just to keep you hanging on. And it's life support. It's life support for Wales, it's life support for Northern Ireland, it's life support for Scotland. The majority of people in Northern Ireland at one point in time actually did like the life support of the Union. The younger people that are growing up now are actually beginning to question it. Yeah. We see a rise for Ireland to be united. We've seen a recent rise in the latest polls coming out of Wales, where an awful lot of people are now starting to think that Wales can actually stand up.
And obviously we've seen the big turn in the polls in Scotland.
That obviously goes without saying. And what is really heartening is the fact that that's all done thanks to Boris Johnson. Every time he opens his mouth, every time Douglas Ross opens his mouth, the polls start shifting again, because these people are completely incompetent. And they don't want to go down themselves. They want all four of us to go down at the same time. Do you know what I mean? That's how narcissistic that they are. It will not change. But every time that they open their mouth, it'll go from 58, and we haven't chapped a door yet. Do you know what I mean? Just activists like me who love chapping doors. That's hopefully going to come if everybody screws the nut over Christmas and New Year, and we can get back out onto the doorsteps again and campaign in a proper way. Then that support is just going to go from 58, please Lord, 65 would be, mesmeric.
Well, we hopefully have some good news here from Scotland, or I think it's good news. New research has pointed to a drop in alcohol-specific deaths in Scotland since the SNP introduced minimum unit pricing on alcohol in May of 2018. According to new data from National Records of Scotland, there were 1,020 alcohol-specific deaths registered in Scotland in 2019, 10% fewer than in 2018, and the lowest annual total since 2013. This is the first full year of data since Scotland became the first country in the world to introduce a minimum unit price for alcohol 2 years ago. Leading health organisations, including the Alcohol Health Alliance, have described the policy as a huge step forward for public health, which demonstrates the effectiveness of measures introduced by the Scottish Government. Now, Chris, this was pretty controversial at the time. A lot of people said, this is going to punish ordinary, healthy drinkers. As my good friend Darren McGarvey pointed out on Question Time at the time, people may think, this will only affect the real Jake balls, it's not going to affect me, but then suddenly they notice they're spending a lot more money on booze. Anything that reduces Scotland's drinking culture, that encourages people to even cut down a wee bit, has to be a positive, doesn't it?
Of course it does, yeah. But I'm still here. They'll probably be battering my liver to death 2 years after I die anyway, but that's neither here nor there. But it does actually, but again, and I hate coming back to Brexit, but with the introduction of tariffs being imposed by the EU, we're going to see another price hike again. Possibly by 50 pence, even on a bottle of wine. And although 50 pence doesn't sound an awful lot, but when like a champagne socialist myself, when you're looking at your centimillions and stuff like that and all the rest of it, to go along with your quail's eggs, then 50 pence actually sort of like makes a difference. But again, people did actually sort of like cautiously welcome this. But again, it proves that Scotland can be very pragmatic and very progressive in some of its policies regarding its citizens. Now, I wish that we could also replicate this with regards the drug consumption rooms.
Safe consumption areas, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky to actually be out in Lisbon for my 50th birthday a couple of years ago. And, they have got a tremendous approach towards safeguarding their citizens and helping them through their drug rehabilitation. And it is, honestly, it is world-changing. That they have vans out on the street, they have support workers out on the street, and nothing is hidden. With that support, they are offered counselling, they are offered government services and stuff like that to get them back on their feet. And so much of that is missing in Scotland at the moment. That again, it could be easily replicated. We've done it. Groundbreaking, not groundbreaking for the likes of you and I, both of us enjoy a smoke. But back when Stuart Maxwell brought in the smoking ban and all the rest of it, people, said that was going to be a game changer for Scotland as well. I mean, Scotland's always been hit over the head, with regards to the poor man of Europe. But an awful lot of people don't realise the fact that we're not actually in charge of the powers that would allow us to actually change it for the better, such as the providence over drug misuse are all down to the UK government. So the small powers that we have got, we were able to, come up with this policy regarding minimum pricing, in order to try and show that, there is different choices that we can make, given the levers, if we are given the levers, should I say.
Absolutely. Well, we move across the Atlantic now, and President-elect Joe Biden today began a new phase in his transition to the White House, after the Trump administration gave the Democrat access to critical resources that will enable him to take over in January. The General Services Administration's announcement yesterday evening that it would formally recognise Biden's transition came after weeks of President Trump falsely claiming that the November 3rd election had been marred by widespread voter fraud. Trump later tweeted his support for the move. Critics have said that the president's refusal to accept the result of the election undermined US democracy and undercut the next administration's ability to fight coronavirus. While Trump has stopped short of conceding the election, it was the closest he has come to acknowledging that it is time to hand over power to Biden, who is due to take office on January 20th. The GSA's announcement will allow the president-elect to access millions of dollars in funds and focus on putting together a leadership team. It also paves the way for Biden and Vice President-elect Kamala Harris to receive the regular national security briefings that are otherwise reserved for the sitting president. Biden and Harris are also expected to formally introduce their appointments to critical national security and foreign policy positions at their HQ in Wilmington, Delaware, later today. The Biden transition team said meetings would begin with federal officials on Washington's response to the coronavirus pandemic, along with discussions of various national security issues. So, Chris, I mean, this is a good news. I mean, it's anything that looks like a peaceful transfer of power in the world's most powerful country is welcome news at this stage, isn't it?
Oh, of course it is, and it's obviously it's long overdue. You know, because Trump, you know, like a petulant child, has been impeding Biden from actually getting on and you know, setting up office and stuff like that. I heard it quote today that it was $100 million that has been made available to Biden, you know, for his team to sort of like move on in. That then gives access to offices and stuff like that, you know, which obviously are being vacated overnight, shall we say. And it's coming, well, it's better late than never, shall we say. But, you know, along with that, we were talking in terms of, well, it's Trump's COVID. Not any longer. Now it's Biden's COVID, and he needs to have offices in order to deal with that and deal with it successfully. You know, deal with it a hell of a lot better than what Trump did, because Trump, you know, was basically, you know, for want of a better word, he was a COVID denier. And you know, whereas Biden actually sees what is happening. I mean, it was something like, what was it, 2,000 deaths a day in America at one point in time?
Something like that.
That is just horrendous. Do you know what I mean? For a president to actually allow that to happen is absolutely horrendous. So, you know, let's get Biden in, get his feet warmed under the table and stuff like that. See what he comes up with, and what is it? They've still got. I think it's about 80 days now before he's actually inaugurated.
I don't know. It's not even that. It's about 60 now.
60, is it? So it's as short as that. That you know, it doesn't give Biden an awful lot of time to establish a team. But I'm pretty sure that he's been doing his homework in the background and stuff like that in order just for people to sort of like hoover in, shall we say.
Yeah.
Hoover.
We move on now to a story that I know you will have plenty to say about, Chris. The French government is facing growing anger over the shocking use of excessive force by police dismantling a protest refugee camp in central Paris. Officers were filmed tipping migrants out of tents, slamming riot shields into individuals, chasing people down streets, and attacking refugees, journalists, and others with truncheons and tear gas. The criticism comes as the government is already under fire for a new law that would give police greater powers and is viewed as a threat to the freedom of the press. The Paris mayor, Anne Hidalgo, also expressed outrage at what she called police violence and said the breaking up of the camp was a denial of France's humanitarian duty. Police and gendarmes were sent in late on Monday to clear a camp from the square in central Paris. About 450 refugees set up tents at the request of the charity Utopia 56 to protest against the forcible clearing of migrants from makeshift shelters in the northern suburb of Saint-Denis. While some of those evacuated were provided with temporary accommodation, scores of migrants were left wandering the streets. Before the protest camp was set up at the Place de la République, Utopia 56 had issued a statement demanding the authorities provide shelter for the estimated 3,000 homeless migrants sleeping rough in and around the French capital. As night fell, police and gendarmes arrived to clear the square. Officers were filmed pulling up tents and throwing migrants to the ground. Lawyers, MPs and city councillors in the Place de la République tried to calm tensions and stop the police action without success. Police used tear gas and crowd dispersal grenades to break up groups of people, and journalists said they were deliberately targeted. Rémi Bussin, a reporter with the online news website Brut, said he was attacked 3 times by the same police officer, despite showing his press card. Chris, I know you've worked quite a bit at the refugee camps at Sangatte and around that area. This camp, obviously, in Paris, is slightly different than the types of camps that we've seen at Calais and around that area, but still disturbing to see the police taking such heavy-handed action, isn't it?
It's hellish, and to be honest with you, Kenny, I have to use a certain amount of restraint because the words that I want to use are just not broadcastable. This is a heinous crime against people who, through no fault of their own, are left languishing at the mercy of not just the French government, but the EU as well, and the Italian government are complicit in it as well. Greek government are complicit in it as well as the UK government as well. And we actually witnessed this 2 years ago. We have Eastwood Refugee Aid have not been out obviously this year. We normally go out. This year, we normally go out at the tail end of November to deliver some much needed aid to our friends at Care for Cali. And we also normally run up to Brussels. We've got a friend there, Abid Pervez, who is from Bristol, and he actually runs the Belgian kitchen. And they actually produce meals for refugees, and they take them out to the various parks, and it's all done through sort of like Messenger and stuff like that, to come to a central meeting point. And whilst we were on the motorway going up to Brussels, you can actually see people camped underneath the motorway arches and stuff like that, the motorway supports, and these are many villages, and it's, to be honest with you, it's not nice for the French citizens to see their country lacking in the normal humanitarian way that the French have behaved for so long. You look back at the Second World War and stuff like that, and France was more than welcoming to, anybody and everybody who was fighting fascism and stuff like that. And these people are fighting oppression as well. The reason that they're there in France is because they have been pushed to the furthest most point in the hemisphere that they cannot go any further, obviously because of a body of water. And they have got nowhere. They have got nowhere to go. Now, I'm not saying because of that France is duly responsible. That's not right. Because I did actually point out the fact that the EU have not covered themselves in glory in this. Despite the violent attempts from my friends in Care for Cali, the person who runs that, Claire Mosley, is a wonderful, wonderful advocate, and she works 365 days a year, just helping people out with coats and shoes and food and basic medicine and stuff like that, tents and sleeping bags. I've seen this. I've seen police slashing tents. And I've also witnessed as well the fact that police pull a refugee to one side and take one shoe off them. So that forces them to wear 2 odd shoes. That makes them equally identifiable if they do get any money. The shopkeepers won't allow them in. So therefore they can't top up their mobile phone. They can't go and buy an energy bar. Do you know what I mean? This is sickening. Now, to do that, to actually put 2 odd shoes on, is basically like giving them a yellow star. I hate to bring that up, Kenny, but that is exactly what it is like. And the I'm not saying that all the police are brutal. No. But the way that they extol their brutality, because I've seen their raids, I have seen like French meat wagons coming towards us and stuff like that and all the rest of it, and we've had to bugger off because the journalist is quite right. They don't care if you're a humanitarian aid worker, if you're wearing a high vis or you've got a reporter's badge. the French police have been given something to do, and they will carry it out to the letter of the law. And that's that. There are no shades of grey in this. It's black and white. And so the actual treatment is absolutely abhorrent. But you cannot just solely blame the French government. I would hate to think what would happen if Marie Le Pen ever get in.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And looking at Macron, he's a bit of a sort of like a left centrist. Not, I wouldn't say he's wide on the left. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. But he's very sort of like centrist with sort of like some sort of like left policies. But again, as I say, it's wrong to blame the French government completely. The EU need to step up to the plate, and the EU really need to do something about this, because it is an ongoing situation. We've actually, we're still collecting. My good friend Ron McKechnie down in Helensburgh, my friend Colin Skinner, he's in East Rend with me as well. We're still taking stuff in, and we're arranging to get it down. As far as Gretna Green, as far as Carlisle, and then it's getting transferred into another conveyance and then taken down. And what can't go abroad at this moment in time, because quite a lot of the sailings are cut as well. That it is helping refugees that are actually in England at the moment in time. We start getting on to Priti Patel and all the rest of it. I'll probably keep you here until 10 o'clock. But there is actually refugees who are being housed in former military barracks down in the south coast of England. As welcome as it is, the fact that they are actually got a roof over their head, the conditions are absolutely horrendous. And they are no different to the conditions in Sangatte or Dunkirk, for that matter. Even at the Port de Palais, it is just a basic lack of humanitarianism. And you just wonder how these people sleep at night, knowing the fact that someone else is not sleeping at night. And that is a real heartache.
Well, Chris, as you say, I'm sure you could talk about this for any length of time if we asked you to, but time is running short, so we will move on now. To better news, the Scottish Parliament this evening unanimously passed Stage 3 of the Sanitary Products Free Provision Scotland Bill in a world-leading bid to end period poverty nationwide. The bill, introduced to Parliament by Labour MSP Monica Lennon, will require all of Scotland's public buildings and educational institutions to make period products freely available on their premises. The expected cost to the Scottish budget is around £8.7 million per year. At the moment, 137,000 girls across the UK are thought to miss school at some point during the year due to period poverty. 1 in 10 girls in Scotland reportedly struggles or has struggled to afford adequate period products. The issue first rose to prominence in Scotland following a campaign by Women for Independence. Lennon acknowledged the group's vital work in her speech at Holyrood this evening. So, Chris, I mean, you and I obviously are the best possible people to talk about periods. But, I mean, this is tremendous news, isn't it? For years, this has been a tax on being a woman, and now it's virtually removed for most women in Scotland.
And excuse me, that is exactly what it is. It is a tax on being a woman, and that's simply wrong. Obviously I've got my daughter, so I have a minuscule insight into how it would impact on her life. But for an awful lot of people, the actual affordability of sanitary products, which again, I could go into a socialist rant about corporate consumerism and all the rest of it. How they sort of like manage to make money out of someone else's someone else's misery is absolutely abhorrent. You know, it's right. I would like to congratulate Monica Lennon for doing this. It does show that there are some progressive policies coming out of the Labour Party. I mean that most sincerely. You know, I'm not taking a snipe. It is good to see progressive policies coming out. But it is also good as well for Monica Lennon to recognise the fact that Women for Indy actually pushed this in the first place. And as you know, it rightfully should be you know, widely available for all young women. Yeah,
and again, like the minimum unit pricing, this is something that the Scottish Government is genuinely world leading on. I mean, this has been tested in schools in a number of countries. I know in a few states in the US as well. But to have this in every public building, in every educational institution, it is genuinely a world leading.
Yeah, but it also shows as well as the fact that the actual Scottish Government itself, not the SNP, you have to make the distinction here because Labour were, you know, in charge and stuff like that. That good things can come out from a devolved parliament, and just think of the good things that are coming out of the devolved parliament. When you think that things would be a lot better in an independent parliament, where you're actually working with progressive, like-minded people, you know, who want to actually make a change for you know, the citizens of that country, rather than just carping from the sidelines that you know, that we're all, you know, four nations of the wonderful empire. And
well, we move on now.
Before I go any further,
almost 6,000 people received a funeral support payment in the first full year of the benefit, according to statistics published today. Since it started making the payments last September, Social Security Scotland has paid out £8.7 million to people who have lost a loved one. Eligible applicants currently receive an average of £1,761 to help with the cost of a burial or cremation and expenses such as travel and flowers. Funeral support payment replaced the UK government's funeral expenses payment in Scotland. And Chris, this is something we don't think about very much in our day-to-day lives because, you know, it's so rare that any of us has to organise a funeral.
Yeah.
But it can be very, very expensive, and you're responsible for it. This is a big thing, isn't it?
Yeah, it's again, I go back to you know, and you're going to wonder how I can actually you know, wind this in alongside funerals, but you know, going back to corporate capitalism. The cost of funerals has exorbitantly risen in the last 20 to 30 years in the UK. Now, I didn't personally organise my aunt's funeral. My cousin predominantly done most of the work, and thankfully her son was he was here at the time in order to help with that. But it is there is so much red tape as well. You know, you have to wait for death certificates. You have to, you know, get this signed and whatnot signed and all the rest of it. And then the climate of COVID, you know, where offices are not, you know, fully operational, and you know, getting these certificates can be very, very problematic. You know, and you know. And even in normal times, if you add the cost of a funeral, a basic funeral, and then you add on the cost of the wake as well, you know, I mean, at the moment we can't have wakes and stuff like that. But even if you add that on, you're looking at roughly about £10,000. Do you know what I mean? Just for a basic funeral. And some obviously, some funerals are more ostentatious than others and stuff like that. And that's entirely right and proper for those people that want to do that. But you know, the affordability, again, we were talking about progressive policies coming out of the Scottish Government, you know what I mean? And the Scottish Government managed to find £8.7 million in order to help with this.
Yeah.
And that's what government should be doing. Again, like what we were talking about, the period poverty, is the fact that like being able to get on with the day job and actually do the things that people require, not what the people would wish for, but what they actually require. Do you know what I mean? The people require, sanitary products, tampons, and all the rest of it. People require to have a decent level of respectability in their funeral.
Absolutely.
I mean, I would. I have got my own thoughts on stuff like that, my own funeral, but I think it means, obviously it means more to the people that are still here than obviously them. No, but I mean, some people do get rather windy about their own funeral, and and why I brought up corporate capitalism is because you see these adverts on the television. I've seen the ads with Parky and stuff like that, and they're asking you to pay £10 a week into a pension premium. In order to cover the cost of your funeral. You know what I mean? And it's, bizarre. But it does show you that, once you sort of like grow up and calm down out of your teens and your 20s, you have to sort of like think about, well, maybe it's a wee bit selfish to think that, other people have got to pay for my send-off. So where do you sort of like draw the line? Do you let's spend the £10 a month in order to get the coverage, or do you wait until the state just
Anyway, we move on now. We've just got a couple of minutes left, and thousands of disadvantaged young people are being helped to develop valuable digital skills through the Scottish Government's Connecting Scotland programme. More than 23,000 iPads and Chromebooks are being distributed among digitally excluded low-income families and care leavers as part of the latest phase of the £43 million programme. As well as a new device, recipients also receive mobile data and help to use the internet confidently and safely for up to 2 years. Connecting Scotland works with local authorities, public bodies and third sector organisations to reach people across the country. And Chris, this is something that particularly when people have been stuck at home, we've talked about a lot. But again, really good news for people who are digitally restricted, let's say.
Yeah. And again, wouldn't it be wonderful if we had a broadband system that actually worked for everybody at the time of need? Because I know for a fact that my own son is he's attending virtually Strathclyde Uni to do a postgrad, and 99.9% of that postgrad is online. So I mean, obviously he's got his own equipment and stuff like that, but he relies heavily on having the broadband and the bandwidth in order to do it. Whereas there's people in rural areas that might not have that. And they might not even have access to the machines, in order to facilitate it. So again, it's the Scottish Government, forward thinking and actually providing hard material in order that children and students are not left behind. I mean, what can I say? Again, clear. What's the word? Clear evidence of the fact that the Scottish Government are more than capable of getting on with the day job.
Well, that seems like a place to end. We are just about out of time. I'd like to thank Chris very much for joining us in the studio today. It has, as he said himself, been a pleasure to see him in person. Now, before we go, we do want to ask you to help us out, as we've said several times in the last week or two. We are running a crowdfunder just now to try and raise £100,000 with which we can employ a full-time editor and full-time journalists to help us build a better broadcaster for Scotland. And to promote that, we have got a wee video to show you now, I think.
the Catalans, the Basques, the Galicians in the Basque.
An independent future for Scotland.
How quickly do you think a referendum can be arranged?
Best practice demands that it should be 6 months.
Just looking at the overall share numbers for Scotland at the moment, the SNP 46.4%. So that was our wee crowdfunder. As you'll have seen there, you can go to broadcastingscotland.scot/donate if you want to donate. If you'd like to sign up and become a regular supporter of Broadcasting Scotland, you can go to broadcastingscotland.scot/register. If you're not able to support us financially, we do understand. The shows will always be free to view online. You can still help us out by following us on Twitter at BroadcastScot, by liking our Facebook page, by subscribing to our YouTube channel, and then sharing the shows around. We're not intending to spend a lot of this money we're raising on marketing. We're still relying on you to do that for us. So do please let people know where Broadcasting Scotland is and why you think they should give us a try. And finally, we are talking about employing people, but we're also going to need volunteers all over the country to help cover the election the way we want to. We want people in every count in the country. So if you're interested in getting involved here at Broadcasting Scotland, you don't have to be based in Glasgow. That's very important to make you aware of. We want to hear from everybody who wants to get involved in building that better broadcaster for Scotland. So do please get in touch with us. That is absolutely all we have time for tonight. Oops, sorry about that. That is absolutely all we have time for tonight, though. So thank you once again to Chris McCusker. I'll be back again tomorrow night at the same time. But until then, have a great night. Goodbye.